Hello.
What's going on?
Did you not know I started it?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Maybe they missed that part.
That was the funny part.
Yeah. You're always funny.
No? Funny looking.
Said no.
Funny looking.
Said you're always funny. What do you have here?
Oh, no.
That looks like a 12 by 16, not 11 by 14.
Look at her up.
I don't know. Hold on, everybody. I have to get a ruler. I was going to do some piece that I have to, like, next day or somewhere.
What's the difference?
12 by 16 versus 11 by 14?
Yeah.
Maybe it is 11 by 14.
Oh, you say that now.
Let's
which
see.
it is.
I was wrong. Just making sure here.
Sorry.
I'll put it back. He's cleaning his studio.
Well, this is
This is the cleanest I've seen it in months.
Yeah.
Look, you can see the floor.
Most of it.
Look. They're giving you little hearts for clean studio.
Yeah.
I am not sure that's for the clean studio. They might just be laughing at us.
That's all right.
All right, what do you got here?
My graphite powder. I'm doing something for a thing that's going off next week to a show, and so I'm starting the background.
Ampersand clapboard.
Yeah, I put up a post. We put up a post on
Muddy Colors
about the process. We didn't get the video up for that, but it's a long post. It kind of goes into it in detail with words.
Yes.
So you can if you want to go there and check it out, you can look there, and it'll be a physical copy of essentially what I'm doing here. So,
playing.
yeah. This is how I kind of start. This was a board I actually had already started working on, and I didn't like the
Saw you
pattern.
wiping it off.
So yeah, I took the Mr. Clean Magic erasers, and I wiped it back to what you see here is pretty much pure white, or as it's sort of a cream color.
Caitlin said, "Congratulations on Muddy Colors."
Oh, thank you. It was an honor to be asked, and I get to be a contributor on there for a while, which is cool. I gotta come up with things to write about. One of the things I'm going to write about, though, is like inspiration will be one of them, and the other one is a narrative in terms of personal narrative, and what I like, in terms of how I get to what I want to say in the work.
Not how to clean and organize your studio.
Yeah, no, I'm not an expert at that. I think you'd have to have done it more than twice
in
to
a
be
year.
considered an expert. I do kind of clean my studio every now and then. So,
I'm just picking on you.
I can't believe the back door's open.
I know, because it's hot in here.
I know.
And someone asked what you're doing, and you are laying down.
I'm laying down a graphite wash to create kind of a textural background that I'll work back into and start to play with. So, it just kind of starts a little bit randomly, and at some point, if I like the way that some of the shapes are stacking up, I'll stop and start playing with it and see if something comes of it. And if not, like so many times, I'll start and I'll like what's going on, but then it'll get destroyed, or during the process of it, it doesn't work out the way I want it to, and I'll end up just wiping the board back down and starting over.
Yeah, I thought this was one you looked at me and said, "Look, I could use this for something."
No, that's over there.
Oh, okay, that's over there.
That way you can see the.
Yes, someone asked if you displayed at a gallery. Yes, he's displayed at, just had a solo show last August at Copro Gallery in Santa Monica.
So.
Hold on, I gotta turn off my phone. Turn the sound of my phone, or we're gonna all hear it. There we go.
So this is more of a little bit of an abstract, playing with shapes and patterns and stuff. But that's kind of where
this might go.
This
is not on paper. It's on ampersand clapboard. So
yeah. If you do this on paper,
it's a hard board.
Yeah, if you did this on paper, you'd never get it off.
Yeah. Well, and it'd be all wrinkly.
You'd never be able to erase back into it.
Right.
Well, with watercolor paper, like a good Fabriano, you can do a little bit of it, but it has to be super dry before you come back to it.
Yeah, but that's what you're.
And that's the Gate
of Fire is on that. It's not as.
It's hard, much harder. This is not an easy process to begin with, and on paper, doing it like this it's even more difficult. Getting a lot of hairs, but it doesn't matter if they get hairs in this because it's not like oil. When it dries, you can just pick them off and they're fine.
Pick them off.
Yeah, pick them off. I actually have a fine tooth comb that I usually brush out my brushes with to get rid of loose hairs.
That's because you've been cleaning everything.
Yeah.
All the dust and dirt is.
So
Reminds me of an exercise Tim Gula taught.
Tim Gula. I'm not familiar with the name, but I'll look it up. So
Someone said use chlorine.
chlorine.
Oh, no, he doesn't. It gets
This is basically water. Water will take it off. Just is pretty easy. Water and a sponge.
Yes, he does use graphite powder and water. This is just a this is just a jar of water, and that's the mixture of graphite powder.
The graphite powder is the Cretacolor
And the generals.
So,
does it work on gesso? It's a little more difficult.
It does work on gesso. It just again, gesso tends to be a little more porous than the clayboard, and so it's a little bit harder to get off. But I still like the look of it.
Right.
It still makes a really good look. It's just how hard you're willing to do the subtractive technique. So what I don't like to see when I'm doing it is everything starting to look like it's the same shape or too organized. Because if it's too organized, it starts to look fabricated rather than as random as I kind of sometimes want it to be. So.
Oh my God, the dog is barking. Have you ever begun this process with a specific image or goal in mind?
Yes, it's kind of a little bit different when I started wanting to do something.
Yeah.
She's walking over to let the dog in.
Come on. Come on. Oh my God.
What I typically have to do is. When I have a specific image in mind, is I'll have to lay out the piece, kind of a full line drawing at the right size, and then when I do this part, I sort of mentally work around the areas that I need to work around, and then I'll have to transfer my line drawing to the piece. Whether I use usually the best thing that works on top of this is a projector to project a sketch,
right?
Because then you can get everything and you can just draw back into it. The other way is just to basically, you have to, sometimes I'll do a light oil transfer, coat regular plain paper with a black or, with an oil, and then do a light, because it doesn't really interfere that much if it's super thin, just scrubbed in.
Right.
Oil transfers are fun because, like I said, they don't really get in the way, and you can still work on top of it. As long as you know where not to put oil, right?
Right,
so
right.
Use black to make a line transfer.
Yes.
You have to know where you're going to go back to white. But at this state level, and as thin as it is, when you transfer it, it'll still erase off. And oil will still erase off even after it's dry at this level. So that doesn't really hurt too much. I kind of like this the way it is now.
So someone is asking, can you recommend, aside from clayboard, anything with the technique? Oh, you use gesso, but
I've used gesso board.
It's a different. It works differently.
Well, a little. It's just like I said. It's a little harder. You can do this with if you make a gesso board normally and sand it, but you keep get it as smooth as you can. Otherwise, any place there's texture on gesso or texture on the board itself, it'll be super absorbent with the graphite, and you'll have a much harder time getting it off. But you can take it off with this was taken off with steel wool. So you can take a lot of it off with steel wool if you have enough of a ground underneath it.
Right. I don't think this one isn't finished though.
It's basically I just started it. I haven't even really decided which direction it's going to go in yet. And for what it is, it sort of looks like a creature.
Sort of looks like a horn.
Well, there's all kinds of I like sitting on some of them. This one has been at this stage for like a couple of months, actually.
Yeah, it has.
Just leave it there until I decide. You can actually, if you also work digital, one of the things I would suggest is when you do this, get it to this point and let it dry, or I'll use a hot air gun to dry it, and then scan it in, because you can always incorporate these textures into digital work too.
Play with it.
And also, if you have it scanned in, you can position your sketch on it.
Where you want everything.
Where you want it, and then use that as a reference for the piece when you get back to the physical part of it. But anyway, so what you got to do is be careful when you're doing a hot air. You have to be careful not to stay in one spot too long, because this stuff will it'll bubble, and not the graphite, but the actual coating of the gesso board will boil up.
Clayboard, yeah.
Of the clayboard, yeah.
I like this part right here.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that it's kind of fun looking.
Do you work on a piece for days, like not finishing in the day you started? Oh, yes.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I have done like a 5x7 or an 8x10 in one night.
Yes.
But
there's many times that it's several days.
Yeah.
And
like a piece that's like 11. What is this? 11x14. I could easily spend. Well, I probably will spend about 3 days on it.
yeah.
So, and you can tell when it dries because it becomes dull. You can see how it's it becomes lighter and duller. And then you have to be very kind of careful when you get ready to polish it, which is the second step to this.
Right. How fast does this dry without a hairdryer? It looks very liquid.
In an hour.
Yeah.
You can sit it here in an hour, come back to it in an hour.
About an hour or something.
What you got to be careful about, though, is the underside will probably still be wet.
Oh, you got to pick it up. That's
You
right.
have to pick it up and
clean
wipe
off
it
the underside.
Because some of the water from the brush will go underneath it. So, oh, see, look, it started to bubble right there. I held it there too long, and it started to bubble.
I'm going to get it on the other part, too.
But I don't care. I'll work around it. I've had pieces do that before and just incorporated the shape into the piece.
Right.
So,
if you don't mind sharing, I was interested in how you managed to phase into making your craft your vocation. It makes my soul smile, and I'm currently in the beginning processes. We've done this for a long...
I think you messaged us earlier with this question, and I intended to get back to you. I just haven't done it yet. That sounds like the question somebody just messaged us not too long ago on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't.
So it took a while for me to figure out what I wanted to do.
Yeah, but you've been working at this for...
But I've been doing it since 1988 professionally.
Right.
And so the way to do it, the way that I guess you could say that I did it initially was I just started putting my stuff out in conventions. And, I did illustration. I did a lot of illustration work.
Yeah, you did contract work, and then you still did your own work along with the contract work.
Right. So... And everybody, you're going to have a slightly different process. It depends on how adept you are. Like somebody who really loves to do contract work might spend a whole lot more time doing contract work than I did.
Right.
Right. Or they may be completely satisfied with doing contract work, which is cool too. That's definitely
you're going back into it.
Yeah. Well, no. What I do is before
this is your dry
polish it, I have to sort of lift off the loose graphite with a brush. We have a puppy in here, by the way. We just got him a couple weeks ago. This little guy.
Stop stealing the cups!
Hey. His name is Ozymandias. So see the bubble?
I see the bubble.
But that's not a big deal. It's just another part of the randomness of the piece now. So what I'll probably do is at some point I'll incorporate that as like part of the signature or something. I don't know.
Something like that.
But the thing is that nothing about it has to be perfect. That's you probably by this time online heard the phrase that the perfect is the enemy of the good. And I don't really even care for the idea of thinking of finding a perfect way of doing things, just the way that feels good to you, the way that works for you.
Another question was, how do you think of the stories you caption your drawings with?
Oh, well, very often they occur to me as I'm working, because one of the things that happens is as the part of my brain that is visual is occupied, the other part of my brain that deals more with words just starts going off on its own. And very, very often the stories reflect sometimes contemporary things that are going on, things that are frustrating me, or things in the news, or just about anything really. And I wrote a young adult novel that was published by Little Brown in 2010 called The Witch's Kitchen. So I have an inclination to want to tell stories anyway, in terms of writing. And I kind of grew up, the way I kind of cut my teeth drawing was by reading and copying comic books. So I've always associated a narrative with imagery. It just took a long time to get to the kind of narrative that I felt like I wanted to tell. And so when I work on these things, very often it feels like the story is the narrative is sort of kind of just assembling itself in my mind. I just start to hear little bits and pieces of it. you could say from the voices in my head.
How important is the time you spend on the entire process? Do you mind it at all? I mind it sometimes.
Sometimes, well, because Vicky is she's very pragmatic in the business side. She keeps a lot of track of the time.
Because he will work on something for 5 days or 10 days.
For me, though, I've always wanted to be the kind of person that was, I like doing the work, not having done it. At the end, it's not that I haven't been happy with some of the work that I've done. It's just that I don't want to like sit and I don't rest on that too often. I really more enjoy the process of doing it than having done it, if that makes sense. I met a writer once that had a writing partner, and he described his writing partner as someone who liked to be known for writing books, but didn't actually like to write books. It was really hard to get this person to work on the stories together, even though they were obviously talented at it. And to me, I'm more about the actual process of doing it. I like doing it, and once I've done it,
but sometimes people. I
do occasionally spend more time than is fiscally sound on a piece.
Yes.
But here's the thing: once you start putting the work out there, the phrase that you're only as strong as your weakest piece is legitimate. People will always look at your portfolio if it's online, or your body of work, and almost always they'll judge you by the piece that is weak. And if you hobble yourself by only ever doing the amount of work that people pay you for, that's something that it doesn't really serve you in the end. What I try to do anyway is I do the most that I can, regardless of what the piece is going to sell for, or what its value is for somebody else, because I have a value that I get out of it from doing it.
Right. Right.
That is independent of the money. So.
Jabraka said, Japanese woodworkers and swordsmiths incorporate imperfection into their works out of respect for imperfection.
That's the beautiful philosophy, and I completely am enthralled by that sort of thinking, because I believe it. I believe that that it may be true that for things to exist in this universe, they have to have an imperfection. Because I don't really believe there's a perfect thing that exists. And that being said, there are many things that come as close as possible simply because they stop striving to be perfect. But yeah, I love the idea of the ceramics. When it breaks, they replace the broken part with a gold to showcase the part that was broken, to see the history of the thing. I love that. I had a series which I still am working on, and this one actually may be a part of, and they were called The Imperfections.
Right.
And it illustrates that point exactly, that there is a flaw in everything, like that
dropping shit.
That Leonard Cohen song. There's a crack in things, and that's how the light gets in.
So what is this? That's not it bubbling, though, is it?
That's just a thicker part of the graphite, and how I treated it when I worked on it. It's just a part of it.
Too fast.
Part of the texture that actually came out more natural than other parts. But see, I love that kind of stuff. It makes it look like it's something that was found.
Yeah. It's very cool.
Just like I've had scratches on pieces, and for one thing, it's hard to repair a piece like this with a scratch unless you're just gonna make it even lighter,
right,
or paint through it. And I just like incorporating the flaws into it in the end. So.
Do you do intaglio ever?
Intaglio. I haven't. Not to say that I wouldn't in the future, but even with this though, just burnishing it a little bit, flattened out the spot, and now there'll be a slight ridge there, but it's sort of almost unnoticeable when it blends in with the rest of the piece. And you notice that when I polish it, a lot of the contrast that was there leaves, but a lot of that will come back at the very end when I put on I put a clear coat of acrylic gloss on top of it, and it makes everything come back in sharper relief. Plus, I work back into it a lot with soft leads and stuff. So.
Yes.
And then my hands end up looking like this a lot, but I wash my hands quite a bit. At this point, though, let me pick a clean finger like this. That's fairly clean, and it doesn't get too dirty when I rub it across.
No, it doesn't come off.
Not much, anyway. So,
a little bit, but
just
not
a little
much.
bit. So And when people say, you know, how do you avoid smudging? Well, my whole drawing starts off as a smudge, really. So,
Which
you know.
is it's a huge change from when I met you 30 years ago.
Well,
30 years ago, it was like everything had to be perfect.
Everything was super smooth and tight, and I did everything with like a 9H or a 6 or 7H pencil.
You had 9H
I had 9H pencils. I still have them because you don't ever use a 9H pencil on them because they never wear down. But
you have like a case of them or something, or a box of them.
You can see it when let's get a clear spot on the rack. Now that I've kind of polished it all off, you can see that almost not much is coming off anymore. So
that's your surface that you're going to work on.
This is the surface that I'll work on, and you can see
there's some cool stuff in there.
That there's a lot of textural stuff going on.
This reminds me of your kind of Rococo flourishes.
Yeah, and even that's a natural occurrence when you move fluidly with a brush, right? And leave. You can do this with oil too. In fact, I have an example of it. Hold on, I'll show you. When you do it with oil, it looks a little different.
This reminds me of looking at a stuccoed ceiling or trees and seeing different faces and designs.
So this was done with just oil with a little bit of a Gamsol of a thinner, and it's that gestural quality of the brush that you can bring through it, and then you can go in and start picking things out, you know. And I actually scanned this in and mirrored it and used it as a textural background for a digital piece.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So, and I have this piece as well that I could play with. That would be more asymmetrical, but that's oil.
All right. Are we going over to the other table?
I should go wash my hands real quick.
All right. You go wash your hands. I'll show them around your clean studio.
So.
When I open the door, he doesn't come in.
He just wants the door to be open.
Come in. All right. All right. We started?
Yeah.
And a recording.
That's recording over there. Yeah.
All right. Are you going to work on that one?
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
I could play with it.
Thanks. Let's see what you
I'm
want.
going to close this door.
Please.
So, in general, the way that I start playing with it is with a kneaded eraser, because that's what takes off the most. Like, it's more subtractive and it'll take off broader shapes. But so there's a lot of stuff in here that I like so far. So at this stage, it's really not about finalizing the idea yet, but about finding details that I like. Which is, in a lot of ways, the opposite of what people are taught to do in school, where you have many iterations of a sketch and then you proceed from the sketch to a final piece. Whereas I start with finding specific areas and passages in the piece that I like, and then kind of building from that to see what comes out of it, to see what my subconscious, I guess you could say, the Rorschachian element produces.
Where it goes.
So, but in the terms of the time we have, I'm most likely won't have even begun to really find that stuff not in an hour, because I'll sit here and casually go back and forth to it all night until something just, like, it's one of those things where you're looking for something and then you walk away from it and you come back and boom, it pops out at you.
So you see it.
Yeah, and that happens a lot with the work that I do. So, and at this point, I usually lay my hand on it and nothing is really coming up now.
Oh, so that's good.
So, but.
All right, another question. Have you ever wondered on the impact of some of your illustrations cause? Let's say to a religious person, and would that drive you to keep creating more?
You know what? I get a lot of questions because a lot of people perceive some of the imagery that I produce as darker than I feel that it is. Most of the images and the things that I illustrate tend to be more guardian figures, and that's usually stated in the narrative. But I do have discussions with people quite a bit about it, because they're curious as to why do I do such dark work, but if you really look at the nature of the pieces, you can see that most of the work that I do is more concerned with they're more guardian figures, protective figures, than they are like I have very rarely painted something that I said, well, this is an evil character in the narrative.
Right.
I've done it once or twice, but most of the time, what I think about it is that it's a fundamental problem in the world that people they want to judge something as good or bad depending on how beautiful it looks. and many, you know, I
Sorry, I'm not laughing.
I know the dog's going crazy.
No, he just stole your foam.
That's all right.
The foam
The foam's not gonna work. One of the things that I've tried to teach my kids is that you know, it's a person's actions are what define their character, not whether or not you think they're attractive or grotesque. And I don't really consider most anybody to be grotesque other than by their actions. But the world in general will look at something and think of it as looking evil, while at the same time real evil looks like the people next door, you know, and that's something that I sort of address in a lot of the work that I do.
I
So
have to get close because it's having a hard time.
I do find a kind of my own personal spiritual aspect in a lot of the works that I do. It's just that I find that like I said, I find beauty in the mortal construct. Skeletons and bones and things like that don't remind me of death. They're beautiful elements of life that are just contained within life that you almost never get to see.
Right.
You know. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it got a little close anyway.
Right. This is the powdered graphite on ampersand clay board, and if you missed the beginning part, this will be up under the stories section, so you'll be able to watch the beginning part
And
see how it was on there.
There's a written kind of description of it on Muddy Colors.
Muddycolors.com. And it was yesterday's post.
So
I find people question my mind because they're not looking at their own.
well, you know, that's the thing, is that people bring their own assumptions to art. They bring reflections to it, and what they do is what they don't realize is that if they see something grotesque instead of something beautiful, that has more to say about them than about you.
Their fears or something.
At least in my mind.
And not that there's anything wrong with what they're seeing. It's just why
Well,
they're
no,
seeing it.
People just bring their own experiences to things.
Isn't
You know,
that when you take art history, that's what you're supposed to look at, right?
Right.
The time that it was made.
I have this example that I kind of trot out sometimes when people talk to me about it, and I go, you know, if I painted a picture that had these beautiful doilies sitting on a table, and two people walk up to it and look at it, and one person came from an abusive home where somebody would you know, really come down on them and be like, you know, abusive to them if they messed up the doilies, and another person, their grandmother gave them cookies on these doilies, they're going to come to this with two different experiences that they're going to take away from it. They're going to reflect these experiences from their own life. So you know, it's really funny because I've literally been at a show and sold the same piece of art to like an 80-year-old grandmother and a 30-year-old biker. You know, that you know, and they're, you know, both of them bringing completely different interpretations to the work themselves.
Right.
And in that respect, at the end of it, my interpretation of it is truly for me, and the people that come to it to, you know, and view it, that take something from it or get something from it, they do have to bring their own mind to it. You know, like I can do something that I don't consider to look evil, and I don't consider to be a representation of negativity.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that's the way everybody's going to see it.
But sometimes I'll walk in and you'll have a question about something.
Well, there are things, yeah, definitely. There are things that I when I do them, I go, how is this going to be perceived? You know, it doesn't happen very often, but say, for instance, if I were going to do an illustration or a narrative piece that involved guns, would this piece portray guns in a positive way or a negative way or a neutral way? And I always ask myself these questions, you know,
right.
And I want to know, not that I'm commenting on that in terms of right now, in terms of political views. What I'm saying is, I want to make sure that my view is expressed properly.
Correct.
Whether it's positive,
or
negative,
timing,
or neutral.
Or the timing of it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely. The timing sometimes has something to do with it too. What's been going on in the news, and whether or not this will then, you know, be read based on that narrative in the context of that.
Right, absolutely.
But, you know, the thing is, you can't do too much of that or you'll drive yourself crazy.
That's true.
You know, you can't predict what people are going to think about your work. Not usually.
No, because somebody always thinks it's crazy.
I've had people
just remember, you can delete the comment and ban the person.
Yeah, I don't usually engage with people who are being rude about it.
Yeah, he's very.
I had somebody walk into one of my art show, one of my booths, and they walked out of my booth crossing themselves. You know, and it was interesting because I thought that's just, it was an assumption they made about the work, or that they brought to the work, that was a reflection of how they see the world, uh, not so much how I see it.
Right.
So,
Right. Someone says, please draw something, but he is drawing something. He's just drawing it in with the eraser.
right now I'm doing, subtractive work, but I have no idea which direction this is going to go in the end. I'm not sure that I'll find anything really, but by the end of this, because one of the things I do notice is that I tend to make different decisions when I'm being recorded and talking, rather than when I'm staring at it and being really quiet and in a kind of a, I sort of go to a neutral space in myself where
Right.
I'm just sort of more open to it. And so very often I'll sit and do a drawing or a sketch, while we do the live feeds, because there are things that I know that I can do that are more entertaining.
Or you can go to do drawing if you want.
Well, I mean, I don't.
You may do what you want.
I don't really.
Question: do you jump to random images when you're looking for references? I saw you opening Pinterest. Or do you have specific favorite artists that you enjoy getting ideas from?
A little bit of both. If I really want to, I look at some people and I think I would love to do something, express something at that level. And then other people I look at and I go, this particular technique is something that that I would love to know how to utilize. And I do very often will let myself go randomly off on different pages and look at things, because I do want to get outside of my own head and into other people's sometimes, and because that's how you bring new stuff into your work, is by very often when you're doing subconscious work, you'll end up making the same shapes over and over again, because that's what your subconscious does. You tend to make your own archetypical.
You've laid out like 4 pieces and gone, look, it's the same profile.
It's the same profile. Yeah.
You're like, I gotta stop that.
Which is not, I mean, a lot of times in terms of doing art for galleries and fine art, they like for you to have a series of work, a body of work that looks unified in that respect. At some points though, it becomes restraining, and you have to step outside and either go further in or further out.
Yeah, and if you're looking for his Pinterest inspiration board,
the one that you can find is Where My Eyes Linger.
Where My Eyes Linger, and it's same I_just draw, right?
Yep.
Yeah, same tagline as here on Instagram. Look, it's 9:37 already.
Right.
Our
what am I doing?
I don't know what you're doing. Our website is AllenWilliams Studio, and our what is it?
Pinterest. You want Patreon on there as well?
Oh, that's right. Our website. Why am I so tired? Oh, it's because it's late. We got to do it earlier in the day. Our website is AllenWilliamsStudio.com. The YouTube is also at Allen Williams Studio. These go up on our Patreon first, which is just at patreon.com/Allen Williams. And then it will go up on YouTube. So
I have like multiple hidden boards that are just my own kind of like reference boards. Not reference, but inspiration, so to speak. And reference to, like I've got Dulac and Rackham, Mythos for Lovecraftian stuff. Magnolia. This is a board. If you look up Hans Bellmer, he's the guy that sort of inspired Geiger's work. Geiger. But Hans Bellmer was one of his predecessors, and you can actually see elements of Geiger's work, like there's a disembodied leg shape that shows up a lot in Geiger's work and some of his abstracts that Hans Bellmer was doing, earlier, and you can tell that he was a very big fan of Bellmer's work. Who was a German artist, I believe.
Nope, his hand does not affect the board.
No, not at all. At this point, there's no such thing as, you can't really do anything to it other than you really have to hit it hard with an eraser. And the soft eraser will only go so far, and then I switch to the abrasive erasers. That's actually a white Prismacolor. But like these hard, like these typewriter erasers, or the Faber-Castell Perfection erasers, which I sharpen on a piece of superfine sandpaper. Huh? So, and then I get like a nice point on this, and then you can come over here, and you have to keep cleaning the point. It's almost like you're taking off little bits of white at a time, little bits of the graphite, but you can take it all the way back to the white of the board with that.
Yeah.
But you have to continuously clean the eraser. It's almost like continuously sharpening the pencil, you know. So
he's working on an ampersand clay board.
This is ampersand clay board, but I can pull out, regular paper. This is kind of boring for people to watch.
Right.
Other than that first process, it's really just about finding the right shapes, and that takes a while. So, but I did want to show the process to get to this point, because that's something that was up on Muddy Colors, and I thought would be a good thing to show. So,
what are you gonna draw me?
I don't know. Here, I'm gonna pull something out. Pull a few things out.
You only got 20 minutes.
Here, I'll show you these. These are more like the line drawings that I do, which I like to kind of approach as more like
How do you do that, dude?
etchings. Hey, this was actually started during one of our live feeds.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Wait, you can't see anything.
Sorry.
Off the edge.
I keep forgetting we have another camera that's recording at the
Yes,
same
the
time.
other camera.
So
So people don't have to look at it
Right.
vertically.
So my hands are a little dirty, but it's not going to hurt them too much. So these are pieces that I started and worked on during different live feeds. This was the actual original sketch I did for the Armoros piece that I did for the Angelarium thing that went up not too long ago.
These all need to be framed.
Yeah. Well, and this
And
one.
fixed and scanned.
This was the sin hook.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, you're done with that too.
yeah.
He finishes them and then forgets to tell me.
This one, which I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with yet, but I thought it would be a cool design to work into some sort of sculptural motif at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Best pencil and eraser painter in the game.
oh, that's very kind. Very kind to say. But so it's very kind.
I like when people give me suggestions for something for you to draw.
Oh yeah.
Like I have any influence over what you're drawing.
Well, you said that one time that the girl kept asking for a cat, and I actually drew a cat in the next week's piece because of that.
I know.
I don't know that she ever saw it.
I know.
But I thought it was kind of fun,
Yeah, you can buy the board at Dick Blick. You can even get it off of Amazon. It's
Yeah.
ampersand.
And it's spelled clayboard with B-O-R-D, not B-O-A-R-D.
I don't know
It's
what
kind of,
they
I don't
do.
know why. But
It's ampersand clay board. You can find it online at Dick Blick or Amazon. Jerry's Artorama, I'm sure, has it.
well, I think any place that sells a major brand will sell it. You might even be able to get it straight from Ampersand. I don't know. They actually are on Instagram as well. Ampersand is.
Yeah,
They've
they are?
occasionally shared some of our stuff. So if you look them up, you could probably ask them if you can't find it in your area
Black Rabbit Artist said thanks for the help with the glasses.
with the glasses.
Yeah, they
Oh,
asked
yeah,
about
yeah.
the
For the
bifocals.
bifocals,
Because
yeah.
Alan had said line in his bifocals because when he got the progressives,
I couldn't stand them.
it was too hard to find.
I was moving my head all over the place to find the focal point, the focal spot, and
So with the line, it's like there's where the bifocals are, and there's where it separates them easily.
so. And with what I do, I actually stylize anatomy quite a bit. It's just that I try to then, after I've stylized it in terms of what I'm doing, I try to figure out more like a sculptural render, so that it looks more believable than it normally would be. That being said, it's interesting when people talk about stylized anatomy to note that anatomy can go wildly different than what you thought it is. I mean, there are people of so many and people and things of so many different shapes that
and
it's really
sizes.
hard to say anything is stylized out of believability. With the exceptions of like this super caricature type stuff,
Right.
which I actually love to. There's a lot of like Sergio Tappi, who does very elongated figures and forms and very stylized, but they're done so beautifully. If you're not familiar, look up Sergio Tappi. I think it's Toppi. He does a lot of black and white line ink work, but beautiful work, absolutely beautiful.
Do you use stumps or tortillons for shading?
Yeah, I've used those on like even on the clay board sometimes, because you want
Yeah, but usually on paper you don't use them.
Not unless there's like if I do it, it's done in a very subtle way to make a slightly different texture. Like the difference between, say, if I'm rendering a claw on a finger, the claw is going to be a slightly different texture because it's smoother,
Gotcha.
and I can use a blending stump. A lot of times, though, I'll grab a brush, though, like a fine point brush, and just do a little bit of that too, because it works out. It's a little more delicate, a little more subtle, and you don't run into. You can. I feel like you can control it a little bit better than you can with just a tortilla.
Is that an armpit you're drawing there?
That's an armpit, yeah. Sometimes I start with armpits. I don't know what to say. So,
You're drawing an armpit?
yeah, probably because
To impress everyone?
probably because you told me I needed to take a shower earlier.
Oh, God. Dude.
It's only been a week.
Man.
It's not. It's
Look,
not.
you've embarrassed me, not you. I don't have to do that. Jesus, why are you saying?
Because amongst artists,
Oh my God.
most of us
Jesus.
don't take showers as often as we need to.
God.
And I'm generalizing there. It's not entirely true, but
Because you guys are crazy.
so I've actually developed characters for like creature design, starting right here like this, because I think of where the joints connect. That's the first thing I usually think of, is how, I want to come up with like a beautiful segment of where the wrinkles and the folds are, and then build out from that. Which I know that's really backwards compared to a lot of concept work, because concept work they tend to want to
Start with the silhouette,
start with
right?
more whole. Well, I've heard people say start with a silhouette, but I've never actually had anybody ask me for silhouettes when I've done concept work.
Or maybe that's because you don't do silhouettes.
Well, I've never seen them ask for silhouettes.
Oh.
I've seen people do them. When we were working on monster trucks, there was a time when they were like, there was one of the artists there was doing a lot of silhouettes, but nobody really ever asked for just specifically interesting silhouettes.
Right. Marco asks, and I can answer this one. Do you frame the artwork done on clayboard under glass or without it, like oil paintings? We don't put it under glass. I would have to put spacers on it. He seals it with the Krylon clear acrylic spray.
Right.
And then that pulls out, like, because this is, all the values have kind of been muted. Once you spray it with the Krylon, it darkens everything back up.
And really, once you put that Krylon on there, nothing is going to move it after that. I mean, aside from it just has somebody taking a nail to it, it's not going to move.
Right. But
So,
don't wrap it in bubble wrap. Make sure you wrap it
Well,
well,
yeah.
because bubble wrap will stick to the surface
yeah.
or leave a thing. Oh, Doug Stannett's on.
Hey, Doug.
He said, "Hey, you two, thanks for sharing a part of the day. And by the way, I took a shower. I am sparkly clean."
Well, you know what?
So
He's one of those people, though, that always look like, just like our other friend, Jared, always looks like he just stepped out of the shower. It's like I'm Bond. It's like the James Bond thing. They always
Doug.
they get out, no matter what the situation, they always look like they're
Doug
perfectly
and
clean.
Jared always look like they're.
Yeah.
Maybe it's their hair.
I don't know. Well, Doug's always has the
Ponytails.
ponytails, but Jared just looks like he came from the dresser.
He did.
You know, so
The hairdresser. Oh, I like that head.
but I feel like I should.
Shadowgraphs is the finished piece behind what you're working on. Mm-hmm. And nope, that one up there is the one you just started.
Oh, there's nothing else in this book. But this is just a background that I'll play with during the week. But I'll post like updates so you guys can see it online. We can post it because this is the one that I think I'm going to work on this for Cockroach.
Okay.
And I'm also going to simultaneously work on Dave's piece too.
Okay.
So.
They all heard it.
Well, yeah, we do scheduling.
Schedule.
And I actually started paying attention to the schedule, which is surprising. And then I decided to be more focused today.
Today.
Yeah.
Today. Okay. Doug said he had no idea I always look so clean.
Oh, he does.
Maybe I don't need to shower so much. Or maybe if you switch to 6 tails, you wouldn't need to shower so much. I don't think we would get 6 ponytails out of his head. Or we could.
We could.
But it would look nowhere near as cool as Doug Stannett's. You guys look at his sculpture.
I'm curious if Doug is on here right now. What inspired what is it, maybe 3 dozen ponytails he has on his head?
He has 6.
Is it just 6? I think there's way more than 6. I think 6 is the minimum.
6 ponytails?
Yeah, and they're very tiny.
You can find him at Dugstanat. They are very tiny.
Yeah, he does some really, really super insanely cool character sculptures.
Oh my gosh!
And creatures that are just amazing, which we own a few of them.
That's right. Your style of anatomy reminds me so much of Beksinski. What do you have to say about it?
I love Beksinski, and if I touch on some of the language that he used, I can say that that would make me smile because I do love his work so much. I find that there's an element to his work that is sort of a little bit beyond explanation, and that you can't necessarily place it anywhere in particular in terms of. I mean, people want to throw it into dark art again, but it's not really. There's an introspective quality to it that very much dark arts are about that surface aesthetic. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of skulls. There's a lot of but when you look at Beksinski's work, there's more there than that. There's more meaning in it, and I love his work. I love let's see who else. There's a lot of people, but I love a lot of the traditional guys, the classical guys too, though. Like Waterhouse and Jerome, all for different reasons. One of my first inspirations was obviously.
You love odd Neerdrum too.
Neerdrum I love, and Giger.
Oh, what's that?
Huh?
Creepy...
Nikolai Samore?
No, the creepy guy from way long ago. Huh? The church guy eating babies and...
I don't know what you're talking about.
Someone on there will know who I'm talking about.
Church guys eating babies?
No. It was like from the 1500s. The artist.
Oh, you mean Hieronymus Bosch?
Thank you. Yeah. How can I not remember Bosch?
I was thinking like in the 1994.
No.
Who was that? Who was eating babies in 94?
No. Doug said it has been 6 for several decades.
My question is what inspired it? What inspired?
He said at one point there were 3 dozen, but 6 is easier. And thank you for the kind words.
Yeah. I think it's cool. I mean, it's definitely him. When you see somebody like that has a hairstyle that just so fits them, it's like Doug. Yeah, that's Doug.
That's why you gotta always have 2 ponytails now. Do you have any?
These are dragon tails. Mine are dragon tails. No.
Okay, so this afternoon when you woke up at 1 o'clock, he literally texted me a picture and he was standing behind me, you fucker.
That was fun.
Scared the crap, and then he went, "Hi." Yeah,
I was like a foot behind her too.
I know, that's what I mean. It's like
even Maeve didn't even know that I got up at that point.
Do you have any tips for dealing with how society kind of sees artists as low status, if you know what I mean? For example, how people don't pay you, etc.
Well,
make sure they pay you.
The payment part is a legality. If they have contracted you to do work, then you're legally obligated. They're legally obligated to pay you. In terms of how society sees us as lower beings, that's sort of like their fault. That's their problem. That's not mine, and it shouldn't be your problem either. You're not. The thing is that in history, societies artists have gone from being the holy men to the lowest of the low, back to being fine art. The fine artists who make $10 million on a single painting and things like that. So I got a lot of that, I guess you could say, when I was growing up. People telling me that you can't make a living as an artist. You'll end up selling beads. My dad actually told me I'd end up selling beads on the street corner and starving to death. And I can tell you, at 214 pounds right now, I'm not nearly close to starving to death. And I try to tell every kid that when somebody tells you you can't make a living as an artist, that just means they couldn't make a living as an artist. That doesn't mean you won't, because I know a lot of people doing it.
Someone asked, did you study under Odd Neerdrum?
I did not, but I think that would have been remarkable. That would be, I think it would be a very interesting thing to do. I did read about it. I read about there's kind of a Neerdrum school, I think, and I've watched a few of the videos where he's talking to students about work and stuff like that, which is really cool.
The finished drawings that you showed, they are not on any special type of paper. They're on Strathmore medium weight 400 series drawing paper.
I do have like really nice paper that is more
Yeah,
expensive,
nice
but you don't.
Strathmore
But I
paper.
sometimes find that the more expensive the paper, the more I feel like if I don't,
More bunged up.
I might get a little more uptight about working on it and it being experimental. Whereas Strathmore is a lower cost paper, but it has a beautiful
I know.
surface to work on, and that's why I like it because
You can tell because we have stacks and stacks
when
of
you
it.
when you go on this with the side of the pencil, it just has a nice texture you can bring out, and you can find a lot of stuff in it.
Doug said the inspiration for his ponytails is just making the world more interesting, living life as art. When
Well,
kids laugh at your hair, it's a good thing.
that you know what I can totally appreciate that. My ponytails came about because my daughter said that she'd never seen a superhero with ponytails, and I said if I were a superhero, I would demand to have ponytails.
Yes.
And so I started, wearing them sometimes, and she got a kick out of it, and I think it was, good for her and good for me. So yeah, just to make, making the world a more interesting place is really all you really need to. That's as good of it's a valid reason as anything, huh?
That's right. Making people think.
Yep. Well, yeah, because to be honest, it's a weird thing, but your hair choice is totally enough to make a lot of people question their worldview.
Oh, I have sparklies in my hair. That's right. That one woman.
That one woman told you, I think God would approve.
Thank God would approve.
Yeah.
She made me stop moving in church. She's like, let me see this. Okay.
So,
I'm thinking mine. I was like, okay. Sure, he has much more important things to think about. Did you at any point consider comic art?
you know what? They work harder than I do. They work so
Oh my
hard,
gosh,
those guys, to be sequential in work. I'm not sure that I'm not sure I could maintain that. That would take so much. That's a kind of stamina in terms of drawing that I don't know that I could do. I've always had the entertain the idea. There's some things that I think I would like to do, but I never jumped into it because, like I said, you're talking about drawing the same characters over and over again. The same, obviously though there are books out nowadays that are a little different. There's some more artistic comics out there where, and when I say artistic, I meant more abstract.
Yeah, but it's just a different. It's kind of like when someone asks you to design their business card.
Right.
It's a different graphic design is different than fine art. Or
Right.
when they ask you to
Well,
design a tattoo, which
yeah.
is a different thing too. It's a different kind of art. It's
I feel like there's some similarities there, but it's especially in tattoo. I think there's some really beautiful tattoo work out there.
I like that. Okay, wait. It's 9:57. You got like 5 minutes left. That was fast.
It was.
We should get the Twitch channel up so you don't have to leave after an hour.
Yeah.
Then you would sleep for 3 hours though.
Yeah. I always tell her, I joke around, say I'm going to take a nap after every.
You always do though.
I don't actually take a nap though.
Well, no, not really.
I just go drink another coffee.
Well,
I've been like,
put the
I was
kids
slacking
in.
off for the last 2 weeks because I've been playing
Borderlands.
Borderlands 2.
I was supposed to tell everyone our website.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Because it's almost over.
All right.
Okay. Website is AllenWilliamsStudio.com. And that is also our YouTube channel is at Allen Williams Studio. And our Patreon.com/Allen Williams. If you want to go take a look there. I got to get back on the stick for that. Facebook page, Allen Williams Art, all that stuff.
So this is stacking up to be another version of a gaunt, I think.
I know, I like him though. I like what's going on with that head. I work on black and white as well. Do you find it challenging to get people to look your way? It seems people prefer color. Do you find that to be true?
You definitely have to find your fans, I think, in terms of black and white. But it's so often I get people that come up and go, I really enjoy seeing the black and white, and I don't see enough of it. And I've been doing it for a while now that, at least in terms of how we've approached it, I've been able to, make a living doing black and white work because I've done predominantly black and white for the last, 10 years?
Well, pretty much.
Yeah. It's always challenging to get anyone to look at your work ever.
Yeah.
so
there you go.
That being said,
whether it's black and white or color, yes.
Yeah.
Just because you start painting doesn't mean all of a sudden
right.
you'll find people.
So there's a great part of that's just a natural part of doing business as an artist. It's just finding your fans,
right.
finding the people that will
support your work.
And that is
just being consistently putting out
right.
the artwork.
Yeah, don't ever
You
let
know, you
anybody
guys
tell
have
you
the
that.
internet now,
Yeah,
but we're old as shit. So,
yeah.
or as my mom likes to say, we're old as dirt.
Uh,
And
don't
we
don't
didn't have internet.
don't let anyone tell you that any of this ends up being easy. There are some people that get lucky with the aesthetic that they have, that it's a more generally popular aesthetic, uh, but none of it's easy. In the end, you do it long enough, you get used to it being hard, so it's not really an obstacle anymore.
Just keep working at it.
Yeah, you just got to keep doing it and find the people that will appreciate what you do.
Right. Last question probably for the night, since it's almost 10. What is your opinion on artists that use camera, Lucinda, or projectors to make a photo into a drawing?
My opinion is that you define your own process and you do what makes you happy as an artist. If you want to use a camera lucida or a projection to get your drawing down on a board, and that's what makes you comfortable, then you do it. What I do is one way. I will project a draw, like I'll take this and I could project it onto this, or I could transfer it or whatever. I could draw it. Obviously, I can draw it by hand, but there are a lot of things about that you take into consideration. Like, what's more important? Is it more important to get a large amount of images out, or more important to be 100% traditional in what you do? And everybody has their own. You have to. It's like asking what is art. You have to answer that question mostly for yourself,
Right.
and then realize that nobody else is bound to your answer.
Right. And someone might not like that you do that.
My personal answer is I don't care how people do it. I want them to, I'm not particularly fond of photo bashing, but then again, in concept art for film, it's unavoidable, considering the speed at which some of those guys have to work. And
That's also not a finished product.
It's not a finished product, and generally speaking, people don't, they don't throw up photo bash pieces, you know, as a holistic, as their own, specific work all the time. It is definitely has a place, but that being said, there are people in the world making a living photo bashing as fine artists, so I can really only tell you what's good for me.
Right.
And
Put your head down and you do your work.
yeah, I like doing it the way that I do it, and I like, if people ask me how do you do that, I go, this is how I do it. But I will never say this is the only way to do it, or that this is the way you should do it.
You got to figure out
This
what
is only
works for
this is
you.
only the way you could do it.
Right. I said thank you much for the live streams.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. And I appreciate your time to doing these. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's difficult for anybody really to make a living at art, especially starting out. So I don't begrudge anybody trying whatever they need to try to get it going. We used to hand color Xerox prints.
That's right. Our first prints were from.
And
from where was it?
Kinko's.
Kinko's.
We used to make prints at Kinko's. I didn't know any better at the time.
You could only afford to make.
And I couldn't afford to actually
prints
have
at Kinko's at a time.
Right.
Oh,
So
we have 28 seconds.
all right. Well,
So we will talk to you guys next week. Make sure you create something.
draw a little bit.
Draw a little bit.
10 minutes a day.
That's right. It says, you two are beautiful minds. I wish you the utmost bliss.
Oh, well, thank you. And likewise, back at you.
Yes, absolutely. Have a good day. Bye, guys.